Welcome to Subtle Secrets of Pranayama 30-Day Challenge. Today's day 11. So we've been spending a lot of time the past several days talking about the dynamics of respiration and then the sensations of respiration. So how the breath moves through the system and then what happens to breath when it gets into your lungs. But yesterday we talked about how the breath just really dissipates in the upper tissues of the lungs before it gets into the lower tissues of lungs. Today I want to talk about the muscles of respiration a little bit more, and then the breathing practice that we're going to do is what's called bucket handle breathing. So it involves the secondary muscles of respiration. So yesterday we talked, and the day before we talked about the diaphragm and how as you breathe into the diaphragm you can do this kind of 360-degree breath, and it's particularly useful if you think about this area right where the diaphragm inserts into the lower ribs, particularly useful for that type of breath. And some people will talk about diaphragmatic breathing. Some people will talk about belly breathing. Belly breathing is kind of similar. I'll get to belly breathing, not there yet. Today, what I want to talk about is the secondary muscles of respiration. So there's the primary muscle of respiration, right, is your diaphragm, of course. So every time you breathe, your diaphragm is working. You can't breathe without your diaphragm working. Of course, the diaphragm can work more than it does, right? Because a lot of times people talk about chest breathers. So what does that mean, chest breathing? So chest breathing could be that you're not taking a deep breath, that the breath is staying sort of in this upper part of the chest. And so what we're thinking about next are these secondary muscles. I'm putting my hands here because they're the intercostal muscles. All the muscles between your ribs, front and back, are working secondarily. They work in coordination with the diaphragm to help you breathe, right? Now, there's also tertiary muscles of respiration, and that's when you get into the SCM and the scalenes, the muscles in your neck. So when you're doing this kind of breathing, and you see that sometimes people do pranayama like, you're doing the kind of breathing where you're lifting the shoulders up. That's using way too much energy. And also there's a lot of other interesting aspects of that. First is that it could be creating tension in the neck, of course. But another thing is that kind of breathing is associated with anxiety, and it tends to produce an anxiety state in the nervous system. So we don't want to go in that direction. It doesn't necessarily have to be anxiety, but it's a revving up of the sympathetic part of the nervous system, which is not what we're looking for. So today the focus, yesterday we were doing 360-degree breath, just feeling it everywhere. Today the focus is called bucket handle breathing. So if you think about your ribs, and I'm going to put a picture on Facebook so you can see this. If you think about your ribs stacked like this, right? They're like the handles of a bucket. And as you breathe in, you want the bucket handles to go like this. And as you breathe out, they go down. Now, of course, that's happening anyway, and they're not going to get to parallel or anything like that. But the idea is to use those muscles to help the diaphragm bring the air down a little deeper, have a fuller breath. And then you're really using the muscles of respiration in an optimal way. So can you do that while you keep this stuff soft so that the scalenes and the SCM don't elevate the shoulders? So it can be tricky, especially when you're doing long ratio pranayamas. That's where this is going to really be beneficial. And as I've said many times, what we're doing is building you up with all the tools you need to access those techniques in a healthy and in a beneficial and an optimal way. Because if you don't start with this foundation, then when you do the techniques, you can have adverse effects from the pranayama practices. No doubt, many people have, for sure. So sitting tall, and you can let your spine be nice and tall. You can let your hands rest wherever they're comfortable. And as you start to breathe in, visualize the handles of a bucket. And it's 360 degrees again, the handles of a bucket lifting up, right up into your armpits, and as you exhale, let the bucket handle soften and depress again. So let's do that a few more breaths. Inhale, letting the bucket handles lift, and exhale and let them soften back down towards your waist. Isn't that an interesting way of breathing? You get the depth of the breath. Keep going. Get the depth of the breath down, and you feel it deep in the lung tissue, the deep lung tissue. but at the same time, you're cognizant of keeping the neck muscles and the shoulders a little bit softer. Of course, they're going to be, there's oscillation into those muscles. You're going to feel it. This interoceptive awareness is really useful. This interoceptive skill or noticing skill is very useful, because then you can use your front brain to override some of the autonomic processes and let the stuff soften. That in turn has a softening or relaxing effect, an effect of activating the parasympathetic part of the nervous system. So just a few more bucket handle breaths for this morning. And you are welcome to take this with you, of course, throughout your day. You can build upon what we've done in the previous videos of breathing into the solar plexus, breathing 360 degrees. Now you can add this bucket handle metaphor to your breath, okay? So I will be back tomorrow, and I think tomorrow what we'll get into is talking a little bit, going again into what it means to breathe into your belly as opposed to what it means to breathe into your chest, how both of those tools are useful. Here's the thing I want you to understand: there's no one right way of breathing. There are many, many ways of breathing. When I was in Brazil, I met a guy who had been raised by some monks in a monastery. I don't know how that happened. He was, a Brazilian guy, but he had grown up with some monks in a monastery, and he told me that according to them, they had more than 100 different ways of breathing. So, there's so many different ways of breathing. We don't want to say that one is the right way. Like, it's good to breathe into your belly and it's bad to breathe into your chest. The answer is it depends on what you're trying to do. And so if we understand the breathing mechanisms, if we understand the effect on the system, not only mechanically, but also in terms of chemically, also what's going on in terms of the exchange of gas, and I'll get to that in this challenge, then we're going to be able to optimize our breathing practices and use them to benefit our nervous system in the way that our nervous system needs it, okay? All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for being here. Don't forget, leave questions and comments, and I'm happy to answer them.